My name is Selena. I'm a newbie, just graduated from college and got a job. Selena, you're still in training, aren't you? What's training like? Any cool colleagues or seniors? On my day off, my childhood friend Nina, who's been with me since kindergarten through college, asks with keen interest. She went on to grad school, so she's still a student. She bombards me with questions, curious about the corporate world I've stepped into ahead of her. The general training is done. Now I'm training in various departments. My company is kind of like a sports club, you know? We start the morning with exercises. There's even a shout out. What? That's unusual. It is. Health comes first, which I totally get. We even have activities like clubs. Right now, there's tennis, football, and a jogging club. Are you forced to join? Not at all. But newcomers are encouraged to try out any clubs they're interested in a few times, then decide if they want to join. Wow, what a fun company. What about you, Selena? I joined the jogging club. I wouldn't exercise on my own, and it seemed like a good way to stay fit. Plus, it's at my own pace, not too strict. That's admirable. I wouldn't join any. I don't like exercising. Aha! You can quit anytime, and it's a good way to network, especially for newbies. It's a chance to meet people from other departments. Oh, I see. It's like an extension of a club where you can interact across different ages and departments, which is fun. Though my company isn't very large, the camaraderie, perhaps thanks to these extracurricular activities, is strong among employees and part-timers alike. Even though I'm only in my first year, I already like the company and want to do my best. But don't you seem a bit tired despite all that? Wow, you notice everything, don't you? I'm impressed by my friend's sharp observation. Indeed, I like the company's atmosphere, and I don't mind being busy, but there is one person who has become a significant concern for me. Thinking of quitting? Young people nowadays really have no perseverance. You've been useless from the start. I hear Mrs. Smith's voice, the president's wife, chiding Catherine, a part-time worker who has been absent for a few days. They should be in a private room used for meetings and interviews, but the door is intentionally left open, and Mrs. Smith's shrill voice spills out onto the floor. The open door seems to be her way of showing that the conversation is meant to be heard by everyone, cornering the person she's talking to. Catherine must be feeling intimidated. You're taking off without notice and neglecting your duties for days, and now you want to quit? Don't think you can just escape because it's a part-time job. I won't let you use your paid leave. I'll deduct from your salary for the days you missed. Her tone has gone beyond sarcasm. It's almost terrifying. The last day Catherine came to work, I saw her with tears in her eyes. Are you okay? Did something happen? I got scolded by Mrs. Smith again. I'm doing my job seriously, but she just doesn't seem to like me. I've been feeling unwell lately. She spoke in a trembling, faint voice. It must have taken a lot of courage for her to come in for the last time and tender her resignation. Paid leave and resignation are workers' rights, and I wish Mrs. Smith would just let her be without any further bullying, I thought with a sigh. This was the third time I'd witnessed such an incident in just 3 months since joining the company. Mrs. Smith, who's also an executive, seems to be in charge of human resources. However, she leaves the actual HR work to the department heads and employees, appearing only interested in controlling aspects like hiring, firing, and assignments. She has a few favorite young male employees, and she's all sweet and gentle when speaking with them. And apparently, women who get along with her favorites become targets of her unreasonable bullying. This is what I've heard from the seniors in the jogging club, and it seems to align with what I've seen and heard. Mr. Smith, the president and her husband, is usually out working hard himself and is rarely in the office. When he is around, she doesn't show her anger, so he probably doesn't know about her behavior. And there's no one who could possibly report it to him. Mr. Smith is a man of character who respects the opinions of his employees, even in his busy schedule. It's hard to believe that his wife, Mrs. Smith, could be such a person. Perhaps having accepted the resignation, Mrs. Smith emerged from the conference room, searching through papers as she walked across the floor. Tears brimmed in Catherine's eyes, following behind. It takes effort to replace staff, you know. Find someone for the part-time job. Finish the handover, then you can leave. That's common courtesy, right? Mrs. Smith's plea for agreement sent a wave of tension through the employees present. Everyone pretended to focus on their work, yet they couldn't ignore her, nodding reluctantly. Amidst this, "Oh, you look like you want to say something." Well. It seems my empathetic gaze towards Catherine had caught Mrs. Smith's attention, sizing me up. "If you're getting paid, you should take responsibility for your job, whether you're a full-time employee or a part-timer." Yes. Her words were correct, if taken at face value. I had no choice but to agree, despite my objections. "Good. It's unacceptable to take time off on a whim or quit in the middle of a contract period, isn't it?" Yes, but I mean, the moment I began to object, I was met with a glare that silenced me. "Remember, self-centered behavior is not acceptable. Order is important. Those who work properly, I do appreciate, right?" In the end, I couldn't say anything, and Catherine remained bowed, like an example for all. Later, some sales employees returned, and Mrs. Smith, perhaps seeing her favorites among them, approached them with a bright smile, a stark contrast to her earlier demeanor. I'm frustrated with myself for not being able to do anything for Catherine, and for giving in to Mrs. Smith. Ugh, it's hard to believe such people exist. No wonder you're stressed. Sorry, I didn't mean to vent. It's okay, you shouldn't bottle it up. And you really couldn't argue, could you? If you did, you'd be the next target. Be careful. You're right. By the way, there was a senior from the jogging club among the sales staff. He came to talk to me afterward, and I felt really watched. Eek, scary. Is that senior good-looking? Maybe he's one of Mrs. Smith's favorites. I'm not sure. Oh, but more importantly, I remembered and changed the subject. Remember the trip we talked about? I couldn't decide between the two hotels you mentioned. Both are lovely, but since Grandpa and Grandma love seafood, I'm thinking of going with this one. What do you think? Right, that was the main topic. She's well-versed in traveling with her family and had been advising me. If they love fish, then yes, this one's the right choice. My fussy grandmother was very satisfied with it, so it's definitely a good pick. My friend recommended it confidently, with a smile. I'm glad. I've been wanting to show my appreciation, and I hope they'll be happy. I had been saving up little by little for a trip with my grandparents, Curtis and Ashley, who raised me after my parents passed away when I was young. They always put me first, and supported me, and I wanted to give something back. So I decided to take them on a trip, choosing a luxury hotel to treat them, thanks to my savings from part-time jobs during college and my first paycheck. Traveling with their granddaughter will surely make them happy. They'll love it. Yeah. Her smile made me smile as well. However, on the Friday afternoon before the trip, Mrs. Smith called me in. "Here, the resumes and job histories of new part-time job candidates. Compile these into the data, and make interview sheets too." Isn't that HR's job? Why me? Well, as a newcomer, you should be experiencing different kinds of work, right? You seemed interested in HR work when that part-timer quit the other day. How did it come to this? I disliked sympathizing with Catherine, but it wouldn't do any good to object. How long do I have? By Monday morning. What, next week? Of course. Please wait, today is Friday. I have my own work to finish too. Finish your tasks first, then work on this. You can come in over the weekend. I'll make sure you're compensated for working on a holiday. She smiled sweetly. Her beautiful smile looked to me like the grin of a witch. We have interviews scheduled for Monday, so don't be late. Oh, and look at past files to summarize the trends of those who were hired. Here, take this. A thick file was placed before me. Is all of this mine to do? Confused and at a loss for words, she said triumphantly as if she had won. I'm glad you understand. You've been ignoring directions and acting frivolously at work lately. Getting off to a good start is crucial. I had no idea what she was referring to. Unable to tolerate such baseless accusations, I decided to speak up. With all due respect, it's Friday and there are less than 2 hours left in the workday. I also have my current assignments. It's impossible to finish all this by the start of next week. even with overtime. I tried to keep my tone as calm as possible while holding back my boiling frustration. Ever since Catherine's resignation, it seemed she had pegged me as her next target, subtly harassing me. She'd make requests for errands or shopping specifically when I was busiest, give incorrect copying instructions, then blame me for delays in meetings. Even during jogging club activities, I'd feel her sharp gaze on me. I'd been managing the daily stress, but the prospect of it affecting the trip I was looking forward to was too much, especially being given an unmanageable amount of work that wasn't even my responsibility. She seemed unfazed by my objections. That's why I said you could come in over the weekend. Oh, and HR materials are confidential, so don't take them home. Wait a minute. I tried to argue, but she cut me off. I have plans now, so I must go. Please take care of it. And with that, she left. The next day, as planned, I was under the open sky on a trip with my grandparents. They looked at me with concern, stifling yawns. Are you sure you're okay? Going on a trip right after an all-nighter. We can postpone it if you need to. Don't worry, I was really looking forward to today's trip. Despite my reassurances, they were worried about me rushing back just in time for departure after working all night. I had informed them, but I must have caused concern the night before. No, this trip is supposed to be fun. I have to make sure they enjoy it. I psyched myself up internally and smiled at my grandparents. Look, the sea is so beautiful. I'm glad it's sunny. Hey, don't worry about me. We're close to the sea, so the seafood will be delicious. Can't wait. Showing excitement, they finally relaxed and started to take in the scenery. But even amidst the joy, an unbelievable nightmare awaited. Did you finish the work I assigned? You didn't just abandon it, did you? A familiar voice intruded on my ears while I was checking into the hotel and wandering the halls alone. Mrs. Smith? It felt as if Beethoven's Fate was playing in my head. I felt it. Why is the witch here? Of all places to run into her? As if hearing my internal monologue, she laughed mockingly. I gave you homework to ruin your floating weekend plans, yet here you are, ignoring my instructions. Her words echoed like a witch's curse, making my head spin. Are you saying you deliberately assigned me work to coincide with my trip as harassment? Knowing about my plans and sabotaging them with impossible demands filled me with anger. Anger arises. But how did you know where I would be staying? I knew she sometimes eavesdropped on the female employees, but I was astonished she would go this far. Weren't you chatting happily during lunch break and at the jogging club? Going on about where you'll go, how nice it must be, flaunting it. It's laughable. Eavesdropping? It's your fault for boasting about it. Realizing that even casual conversations with colleagues and seniors had been carefully monitored chilled me to the bone. Anyway, this hotel is above your station. What? I looked puzzled, and she sighed dramatically. Do you not understand? This is a luxury hotel, not a place for someone like you. You're an eyesore. A payroll thief and a good-for-nothing should go to the old hotel next door. I managed to suppress the anger welling up inside and said, I don't understand what you mean. I get that you find me bothersome, but the rest is just harassment and insult, isn't it? I wasn't shirking work, nor had I done anything to her, yet I was subjected to her unreasonable attacks every day. And why should my precious time with my grandparents be ruined? That's it. I was about to make a decisive retort, perhaps even if it meant resigning, when it happened. So that's what this is about. A calm voice, out of place in this tense situation, came from behind. Grandma! Grandpa, too! I thought my grandparents were back in the room having coffee, but there they were, standing behind me. Judging by their expressions, they had heard almost the entire conversation. This is... I began, flustered, trying to explain, but my grandmother interrupted me and addressed Mrs. Smith. Pleased to meet you. I'm Selena's grandmother, Johnson, who has been acting as her parent for many years. The honorific chairman of Johnson Products, the company that had dealings with yours recently, would be a faster introduction. Grandma greeted her with a relaxed tone. Mrs. Smith's face turned pale upon hearing that. J. Johnson Products? Her voice squeaked in surprise. The industry leader? And you're the honorific chairman? But the employee here has a different surname. Well, that's not strange at all. My daughter didn't take her husband's name when she married. She changed to his surname instead. Being part of a renowned founding family of a famous company, she preferred to stay under the radar. No. As for this child, perhaps she takes after her mother. She could have joined our company, but she wanted to job hunt on her own to earn her place. I'm terribly sorry. I had no idea. Mrs. Smith's face drained of color. Do you think being unaware gives you the right to commit any kind of rudeness? Or do you differentiate people by their family background? No, that's not. In contrast to my serene grandmother, Mrs. Smith was sweating and frozen, despite her well-made-up face. I wonder if you could pass a message to your president. The business deal your staff discussed with us the other day, we'll be considering it void. No, please wait. Ignoring Mrs. Smith's almost shrieking voice, my grandmother continued. I heard that the company my granddaughter joined was focusing on health first, even having sports clubs, and it seemed like a fun place to work, Grandma said, with Grandpa nodding beside her. And after the recent business meeting, we heard Mr. Smith was a man of good character, suitable for a good partnership. But to think Mrs. Smith is such a person? What a shame. While maintaining her calm tone, my grandmother sharply cut her off. Let's go, Selena. Turning to me, she said with a smile. Wait, the deal! Mrs. Smith, quivering, tried to cling to my grandmother's back, but Grandma dismissed her with, It's too late to change your attitude now, leaving her collapsed on the spot. Please, could you mediate something for me? I don't mind about the work from yesterday. Just... After being coldly dismissed by my grandmother, Mrs. Smith turned to me with an astonishingly quick change of face. I refuse. And for the record, I didn't abandon the work you dumped on me yesterday. I completed it before I came here. Check it tomorrow. I was filled with a desire to shout back at her for all the injustice I had endured. But following my grandmother's example, I even managed to answer with a smile. And then, at the company on Monday, the sales department, having been thrilled about the deal with Johnson Products, was abuzz with the news that the deal was off. Apparently, Mrs. Smith had done something. Look here! Mrs. Smith, looking frantic, approached me. Did you already communicate the cancellation of the deal? It's too sudden from yesterday to today. I'm sorry, but I have no insight into Johnson Products' actions. And you, arranging the interview materials. I hear you had everyone in HR help you. What authority does a newcomer have to do such a thing? I gave the permission. Huh? The one who entered saying that was Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, good morning. Everyone greeted him in unison. You? The appearance of her husband, the president, seemed to startle her. Last Friday night, when I returned from a business trip and came to this floor for some work, I saw the newcomer. Her, rushed off her feet with work, and everyone else looking worried but not helping. Something seemed off, so I asked her what was going on. Prompted by Mr. Smith, he explained to her, still not grasping the situation. Mrs. Smith had given me HR work to complete by the start of the week, and instructed me to work over the weekend if necessary, but I realized that it was impossible to do it all by myself. Just then, Mr. Smith arrived, and I was able to consult with others around. I talked to the HR staff, too. They said you forced the work onto her and expressly forbade anyone from helping her. The need for interview preparation is real, but analysis and summarization of past files weren't urgent. Why did you give her HR work in the first place? That's because, as a newcomer, she should experience everything, right? She said she was interested in part-time job recruitment. I hadn't said that, but she was sticking to her usual forceful logic. I thought to myself, classic witch. I thrust into my heart. But Mr. Smith elegantly ignored her excuse. I could have told her not to do it, but she said she would. Since the interview materials were indeed needed by today, I allowed those remaining in HR to help her. So maybe I miscalculated the amount of work to assign? But it's okay, right? It all got resolved in the end. The main issue is this. I've been focusing on sales recently and haven't been able to show my face here much. But I've heard that part-time staff keep quitting because of you. Who said that? They left on their own. It's a nuisance for us that they're so irresponsible, right? She looked around for agreement, but no one consented. Instead, cold stares concentrated on her. Our company values health first, which refers to both physical and mental health. It's fine to work hard, but overloading with work, pressure from superiors, and weakening the spirit are unacceptable. Mr. Smith's voice resonated across the floor, and I almost wanted to applaud. And to burden her, who's been working hard to be filial to her grandparents, with unreasonable demands just for harassment. I find that utterly despicable. It's not like that. And then to barge in on her holiday with her grandparents. What is that about? You're no longer welcome here. What? What are you saying? Go on, get out. Mr. Smith, what did you say? Even I was surprised by this. It's not just between us. I apologize for the Johnson Products matter. We'll ask her to speak to Mrs. Johnson once more. You made a terrible scene at the hotel. And who did you go with? It seemed like she was struck by an unexpected arrow, speechless. I tilt my head, not understanding what it means. I learned of the unreasonable work assigned to her on Friday night. I heard about her trip with her grandparents then. And on Saturday, you suddenly left saying you were going away overnight with a friend. The formidable witch was nowhere to be seen. She now stood there, face pale, trembling. It struck me as odd. The investigation is complete. We'll discuss this further in private. Mr. Smith looked at Mrs. Smith, then addressed the entire floor. Sorry for the disturbance. Everyone, please start your work. I will personally handle the Johnson Products issue. Please bear with us a little longer. Mrs. Smith, now ashen-faced, seemed unable to speak, slumping defeated. A month later, the former president's wife had fallen from grace. It wasn't just bullying of part-timers and female staff, but she had been having an affair with a young male contract employee. It was well known that she targeted women who got along with her favorites, but no one had suspected infidelity. The man she had brought to the trip was the same male contract employee. It was surprising because he was planning to leave after his contract ended and seemed to have been involved with her casually, thinking it was all just a game. When Mr. Smith asked, he apparently spilled everything without much thought. Not the brightest bulb. To think she would risk her life with such a man while married to Mr. Smith, a man of such good character. The lady herself is not too bright either. Meanwhile, our company successfully managed to make a deal with my grandmother's company, as originally planned. Apparently, the deal was sealed thanks to Mr. Smith's prompt and sincere actions after the incident. Johnson Products was already eager, and this only solidified their decision. It's a sobering thought for me, too. At the company, people found out I was the granddaughter of Johnson Products, saying things like, "You got a job on your own? You've got guts. You don't seem like a lady." Which I laughingly replied, "Because I'm not. Huh." Everyone loved me and said, "I'll continue to train hard from now on." And no one changed their attitude. Now, without any worries, I am saving up bit by bit for another trip with my grandparents. It will take time, but wait for me, Grandma and Grandpa. My colleagues, my precious family. I cherish the time I have with the people around me, treasuring it like the most valuable thing.
When I reached my in-laws' house, my husband greeted me with a grin. "The results just arrived, so come on in quickly, ha ha." Wondering what results he was talking about, I followed him into the living room. My husband placed an envelope containing documents on the table. "What's this?"
"It's the DNA test results, haha. This will prove you have had an affair."
With that, my husband smirked and spread the contents of the envelope on the table. My name is Lisa, a 27-year-old housewife. I've been married to Mike for 2 years, and I'm currently pregnant. Not long ago, I experienced intense labor pains and was rushed to the hospital. Though it's been several hours since I was brought to the hospital, I just gave birth. I had our child, who I endured the pain to give birth to. I melted at how cute they were, and I'm so glad they were born safely. Happiness and relief welled up inside me all at once. Once I let myself relax, a wave of intense fatigue hit me. The labor lasted a full day, and I couldn't get any sleep. As a nurse took our baby away to clean them up, I longed for sleep. My husband rushed over after work to be with me during the birth, but he didn't say much after our child was born. At the time, I was too exhausted to notice anything off about him. The nurse returned holding our baby, and then, "Dad, please hold the baby." Saying that, she tried to hold the baby to my husband. But he didn't show any interest in holding the baby and looked at me saying something. Exhausted, I couldn't hear what he was saying at all. Moreover, at that moment, I was getting stitches and I couldn't concentrate on his words. "Huh? What did you say?" I asked once again. But he just left the room without holding our child even once. Wondering what happened, I noticed that the nurse and doctor had uncomfortable expressions on their face. I didn't understand what was going on, but I was so tired that I just fell asleep. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital room and my baby was in the nursery. My husband didn't come to the hospital at all the next day. However, according to the nurse, he was at the hospital and had seen our child. Wondering why he didn't come to my room, I received a shocking message from him.
"After you're discharged, we need to talk about a divorce."
I didn't understand what he meant. Why all of a sudden? I wanted to know the reason, but he didn't reply to any of my messages. I was so shocked that my health didn't improve and my hospital stay became longer. Finally able to go home, I returned to our house. Looking around the room, I noticed that several items of clothing were missing from the closet. I realized that he must have gone back to his parents' house, which made me even more sad. I just got discharged. I sent him a message. Then my husband replied, "This Saturday, let's talk at my parents' house at 1 p.m. That was all he said. What's going on? Did I do something wrong? Feeling frustrated, the day of the meeting arrived. Since the matter was serious, I took my parents with me to my in-laws' house. My sister-in-law, who had experience with childbirth, agreed to look after the baby. When we arrived at my in-laws' house, my husband greeted us with a grin.
"The results just arrived, so hurry up and come in, ha!"
Wondering what he meant by results, I followed him into the living room. He then placed an envelope filled with documents on the table. "What's this?"
"It's the results of the DNA test, ha!"
"Huh?"
"Ha! You seem to be panicking."
"No, I just don't understand why you do that."
"Well, it doesn't matter. This will prove your infidelity."
Saying that, he smirked and spread the contents of the envelope on the table. There were several documents, but the one summarized that the child was indeed his.
"See? The child and I are..." "Huh? Why, it's my child. It's supposed to be someone else's."
I had no idea what was in his mind. He made no sense to me. My in-laws tried to calm him down. All my parents and I could do was watch in disbelief. When he finally calmed down, I asked him a question. "What do you want? Why do you do a DNA test? Do you think I was cheating on you?"
"Well, when the nurse tried to hand you the baby, you turned pale."
"Huh?" According to my husband, when the nurse tried to give him the baby, he turned to me and said,
This baby doesn't look like me. Whose child is it? Are you cheating on me? That's what he had apparently said. Huh? You said that back then? You turned pale at that moment, didn't you? No. I asked you what? Remember? You were just pretending because I hit the mark, right? I was furious at his remark. Do you even realize how difficult my childbirth was? The doctor said I had lost a lot of blood and was anemic. Of course I looked pale in that condition. So then, I've told you so many times already, I never cheated on you. When I asked my husband why he thought that, he said he had been researching childbirth online before the birth. He came across the term cuckoldry and became suspicious. There were many stories of wives trying to cuckold or cheat on their husbands. In one post, the husband said to his wife when attending the childbirth, "The baby looks nothing like me," and the wife suddenly panicked. As the post continued, the man secretly did a DNA test and found out the child was not his. The post ended by saying that immediately after giving childbirth, women are exhausted, and it's an ideal time to catch them off guard. So you tested me because of that? Unbelievable. But the baby didn't look like me at all. Are you serious? Look at this picture. I showed him a photo of the baby I took with my phone. My in-laws, who were next to my husband, also looked intently at their grandchild's photo. Then my mother-in-law said, "Oh my," and brought out an old photo album. Here, this is a photo of Mike when he was born. Wow, the baby looks exactly like me. They're identical. Do you get it now? The baby is truly yours. I've done something terrible. My husband hung his head in shame. My in-laws tried to console him. I realized that my feelings for my husband had completely cooled. So, about the divorce and child support. Huh? No, we don't have to divorce. It's my child after all. Seriously? You suspect me for no reason and now you're saying this? I'm really sorry about that. I regret it. Please. My husband prostrated himself before me. My in-laws, flustered, said, "Lisa, we're truly sorry for our foolish son, but please, could you find it in your heart to forgive him?" However, I said, "Please give me some time to think. Can we live separately for a while?" And I made a promise to set up another discussion later. Actually, there was one thing that bothered me. It was when my husband, grinning, suspected me of cuckolding. He had a smug look on his face even when he was spreading out the DNA test documents. Normally, if a wife had an affair, the husband would be furious. I immediately requested a private detective agency to investigate my husband. In about 2 weeks, I was able to find out about my husband's misdeeds. He was having an affair with a junior colleague at work, and they seemed to have a very intimate relationship. In other words, my husband probably thought that if I had an affair, he could divorce me on my fault, get compensation, and be with his lover. He must have been overjoyed, thinking that if he set a trap, as he saw in the post, I would have a pale face and his plan would work. I immediately contacted my husband and headed to my in-laws' house with the documents. "You took too long, making me wait for 2 weeks. He said that, but he seemed irritated for some reason. How could he have such an attitude with me? I felt that I wouldn't be satisfied unless I thoroughly punished this guy. "So, Lisa, have you reconsidered the divorce?" "I'm sorry to you and the family, but I still want a divorce." "What? What?" "Why, Mike has been reflecting enough." "Yes, even when you were separated, he was grumbling about how sorry he was to you." "Is that so?" Then, for some reason, my husband got angry. "It's not fair to make me wait and then just leave me. First of all, can you, a housewife with no income, support our children on your own? You can't live without my income." How could he be so confident? Even though he had an affair. "Why are you so against the divorce? Don't want to pay child support?" What are you talking about? I just don't want to be away from my child." "Lisa, that's a strange accusation. Do you think Mike doesn't care about his child?" As my in-laws began to question my words, I decided to get to the heart of the matter. "Please take a look at these, everyone," I said, and spread out several photos I had taken from an envelope. In them, my husband was entering the apartment of his lover's room together. In other photos, they were entering a love hotel. My in-laws were speechless looking at the photos. "Is this—" "Yes, this is evidence of Mike's infidelity." My husband's face turned pale instantly. "So, in short, you were the one deceiving me first. You probably thought it would be convenient if I had an affair and the child wasn't yours. But since I was completely innocent, you must have panicked. Even if you divorced and got together with your lover, you wouldn't want to pay child support." My husband's face turned paler and paler as if I had hit the nail on the head. "Anyway, I can't go on with you anymore. Please sign this divorce paper. I will request alimony and child support through a lawyer." My husband was reluctant to sign the divorce papers even at this point, but my in-laws urged him to do so. "We are truly sorry. No matter how many times we apologize, we can't make up for it." They apologized to me on their hands and knees. But it wasn't the in-laws who were at fault, it was their idiot son. "Thank you for everything up until now," I said, lifting my in-laws' faces and leaving their house. After that, the divorce went through smoothly, and I claimed alimony for my ex-husband and his lover. I was able to get quite a lot of alimony. And I was also able to claim monthly child support from my ex-husband. My ex-husband and his lover are said to be getting cold stares from their coworkers now. Apparently, my ex-husband had already been spreading rumors at work that I was cheating on him. However, when all was said and done, it was he who was having an affair, so he lost all credibility with his coworkers. By the way, I heard this story from an acquaintance who works at my ex-husband's workplace, so I was able to sue him for defamation and get some compensation for that as well. My ex-husband ended up drowning in debt, lost all his money to have fun with his lover, and was dumped by her. And his lover felt uncomfortable and resigned from the company. My ex-husband, no matter how uncomfortable he feels, has to pay alimony and child support, so he can't quit his job and is in living hell. Well, it's poetic justice, or rather, they got what they deserved. On the other hand, I got a job as an office worker through a friend's introduction, and I'm working hard as a single mother. My newborn son is growing up healthy and adorable. I want to fall in love again, but maybe I'll wait until things settle down a bit. For now, I'll just work hard and earn more money for my child. Thank you for watching until the end. If you liked it, please subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.
Wouldn't it be nice to practice taking care of each other in our old age by doing household chores? And also practice for when you have kids by looking after them. It's a win-win, right? Susie, my mother-in-law glares at me as if to say, "What's your problem?" In the background, my sister-in-law's husband and my father-in-law Raymond are already assembling a crib without asking. Right before my eyes, preparations for moving in together are rapidly underway. My husband, looking amused, meets my stern gaze. My name is Miranda. I live with my husband, Michael. We met through work and started dating. I was always busy with work, so I didn't have any other opportunities to meet people. Michael told me he liked me from the moment we met, but I initially thought of him as just a business contact. So when he first asked me out, I was genuinely surprised. Although I wasn't initially interested in Michael, I was in my late 20s, and with a little push from friends, I decided to give dating him a try. Both of us had little experience in love, so it was an awkward date. But spending time with Michael was genuinely enjoyable. Fast forward about 3 years, and Michael and I decided to get married. We were both quite successful for being just shy of 30, and with our combined income, we bought a spacious house on a mortgage. My dream was to raise a family and have a dog here with Michael. I thought Michael felt the same way, at least that's what I thought when we first moved into the house. But about 6 months after getting married, I realized Michael no longer shared that dream. My sister-in-law Elsie got pregnant. Elsie lived nearby and would occasionally visit, but her visits increased significantly after her pregnancy. She would often show up unannounced, and I was even shocked to find her sitting at our front door after a shopping trip. When I found her, she angrily said, "How could you leave a pregnant woman waiting outside?" But I had no idea she was coming. I was already juggling a hectic life, balancing work and household chores, and adding Elsie to the mix made it unbearable. She would show up early in the morning saying, "Our washing machine is acting up, so I thought I'd bring my laundry for you to do," or come over at home with her husband and say, "We're hungry, feed us." I was at my wit's end with Elsie and consulted Michael, but he just said, "What's the big deal? Elsie is my sister and she's your sister-in-law. It's natural for her to visit." He took no action. I realized nothing would change unless I took action, so I finally told Elsie, This is becoming a problem. I asked her to stop burdening me with chores in the early morning and to quit timing her dinner visits for when I get off work. Then Elsie left in tears, and who shows up but Raymond and Susie. We live near my in-laws because Michael suggested it would be convenient for when we have kids. That decision backfired as Raymond and Susie came over for what seemed like retaliation for how Elsie was treated. I was made to sit on the floor and was berated for being a terrible woman. I already knew these two didn't like me much. They were kind to me before we got married, but their attitude changed when I said I would continue working after marriage. They held old-fashioned views that a woman should stay home after marriage. They also cared a lot about appearances and lectured me multiple times about how my working might make people think Michael doesn't earn enough. I didn't quit my job, so they started disliking me. I had reservations about building a house near them, but they're important to Michael. I thought their attitude might soften when they have grandchildren, so I went ahead with it. Big mistake. They scolded me for over an hour, saying it was terrible not to help Elsie, who's pregnant. "What if something happens to the baby?" they said, and then demanded drinks when they were tired from their lecture. Even the coffee I made was criticized as being bad and bitter after they left. I was so frustrated that I cried. I even told Michael, "If Raymond and Susie are going to be involved, I want a divorce." Michael was shocked by the word divorce, but seeing me cry, he comforted me saying, "I didn't know you were feeling so cornered." He promised to talk to his parents, and a week later, Elsie's baby was born. It was a cute girl, and both Michael and I melted when we saw the pictures. A week later, when I was idly thinking about wanting a child with Michael, Elsie showed up at our house, and she didn't come alone. She brought her husband, Raymond, and Susie, cheerfully announcing, "We're here!" As I stood confused, Elsie's husband walked in carrying large bags and said, "We'll be counting on you from today." What? I was confused, but Elsie's husband and Raymond were carrying a lot of luggage into our house from the car they had parked in front of our house. What's going on? When I asked Susie, who was sorting through the items in the entranceway, what was going on, she snapped at me, "Why don't you help out? You're so clueless." Still not understanding, I went to the living room followed by Raymond and Elsie's husband carrying something large. Elsie directed them to place it near the living room window. What they pulled out of the box was a crib. "Michael, what's going on? What is this?" "It's a surprise." "A surprise?" "Look, Miranda, you've been having a hard time with Dad and Mom, right? I thought if we all lived together, you would see how great they are and get along." "What are you talking about?" I frowned at Michael's behavior. Michael was still smiling, thinking he had done something good for me. As I took a deep breath to complain, Elsie, holding her baby, glared at me and said, "What's your problem? We're family. There's no issue with us living together." "So as family, Elsie will help with the household chores like I do?" "Of course not. I have a baby to take care of, and I just gave birth a week ago. You really need to think before you speak." "That's right. Besides, this living arrangement is also for your own benefit, Miranda." Before Susie knew it, she had wandered into the living room and seemed to have heard what Elsie was saying. Agreeing to Elsie's baffling remarks, Susie started to say even more incomprehensible things. "Miranda, we'll have to take care of each other in our old age, and if a child comes along, we'll naturally have to raise it. That's why we agreed to Michael's suggestion to live together as practice for all that." What? "So we'll practice taking care of the house for our future and also practice childcare for when you have kids. Isn't that great?" No matter how many times I heard it, the response would likely be the same. I was stunned for a moment, then shot Michael, the root cause of this mess, a piercing glare. Michael just smiled and said, "Miranda must be happy too, right?" I felt a chill thinking that this man might not understand his wife's feelings or anyone else's. For that matter, he must have noticed my displeasure. Suddenly, Michael's mood soured, realizing his surprise had failed. "What's the matter? You don't like it? Well, Dad, Mom, and Elsie have all decided to live here. If you don't like it, you can leave." I couldn't take it anymore. I quietly headed to the bedroom and grabbed the divorce papers I had hidden in the bedside drawer. I had prepared these papers when I previously discussed issues with Michael. I never thought I would actually use them, but their time has come. I returned to the living room and handed Michael the divorce papers. I'm leaving. I calmly made my declaration and began to prepare to leave, pulling out a large suitcase I had stored in the closet. At first, Michael was saying things like, "Why? I did this for you, Miranda." But when he saw I was ignoring him, he filled in the blanks on the divorce papers and handed them back to me without a word. I took them silently and put them in my bag. While I was packing, Raymond, Susie, and Elsie mocked me saying, "Did Michael dump you?" But the truth is, I'm the one who's leaving him. The ones who would be in trouble once I left were definitely Michael and his family. Convinced of this, I packed everything I needed into my suitcase and took refuge at a friend's house for a while. I couldn't impose on my friend forever, so I immediately started looking for a new place to live. I found a promising place near my work, and it took about a month to move out. During that time, there was no contact from Michael. I didn't care, as it was only natural since we were divorced, but just as I had finished moving, I got a call from Michael. When I picked up the phone, thinking Michael might have forgotten something, he blurted out, "Help me." According to Michael, things at his home had gone from bad to worse. The constant crying of a baby had left everyone sleep-deprived, and fights were breaking out due to the tension. Michael and his family all disliked and were bad at housework, leading to more arguments about who should do what. As a result, chores piled up, garbage and dirty dishes accumulated, and flies began to infest the house. Moreover, Michael admitted he hadn't thought about finances and was now in a tight spot. "I can pay off the mortgage on my own." The only ones working in Michael's household were Michael and Elsie's husband. But soon after moving in, Elsie and her husband had a huge fight, leading to their divorce and departure. Just like us, as a result, Michael was left to pay the mortgage originally intended to be split between the two of us. Supporting Raymond, Susie, Elsie, and Elsie's baby while paying off the mortgage would be tough. I was surprised to hear about Elsie's husband leaving, but I had always known Michael would eventually struggle with the mortgage. Still, I couldn't forgive Michael for unilaterally deciding to live together and telling me to leave if I didn't like it. "Where are you now? Things are really bad here. Dad and Mom are getting sick and Elsie isn't helping with anything. She even takes money from my wallet." Do you think calling me back will solve your problems? I don't understand why you think my return would fix anything. You're not just trying to use me as a housekeeper to lighten your load, are you? When I said this sarcastically, Michael fell silent. I wanted to live happily with you in that house. You're the one who ruined it. I don't need to see it to know you're struggling. With parents and a sister like that, it must be tough. But you chose this, so you'll have to deal with it. Dad, Mom, and Elsie are more than just selfish. It's fine. You said it yourself. Living together might make everyone get along. Michael had decided to move in together as a surprise to make me, Raymond, Susie, and Elsie get along. When I reminded him of this, he hesitated and said, "Well, anyway, we're divorced now, so it's none of my business. Good luck with the housework for your future caregiving and the childcare practice for when you have a new wife and kids." With that, I hung up and blocked Michael's number. I later heard about what happened to Michael and his family from a friend who had supported me during our marriage and provided a refuge during our divorce. This friend worked with Michael and had grown up in the same town, so they were in the loop. Michael continued to live in the house we had built, but the neighbors had a poor opinion of him. The constant crying of the baby and the insect-infested garbage-filled house had earned him their disdain. Raymond and Susie were in poor health, frequently going in and out of the hospital. Michael was taking care of them while also raising Elsie's child. Elsie apparently found a new boyfriend and left the house, neglecting her own child in the process. When she returned, she was pregnant, and it turned out her new lover was already married. Even Michael couldn't contain his anger at Elsie and kicked her out of the house. Elsie, who had been financially supporting her new boyfriend, was now in debt and working a demanding job that provided lodging just to make ends meet. While I was shocked at how far Michael's household had fallen, it felt like poetic justice. As for me, I also found a new love. But my boyfriend is a single man, not a married one. He's gentle and kind, and his occasional endearing blunders make him all the more lovable. He doesn't mind that I've been divorced and is willing to consider marriage at a pace that suits me, given my previous fears about it. So we decided to live together first and are now cohabiting in a new apartment. His parents are incredibly kind and have already decided to move into a care facility when they're older, so as not to be a burden on us. Our wish is not to trouble our children. If you and Miranda focus on your own happiness, that's all we could ask for, said my new mother-in-law Sandra. Her words were so wonderful, I wished I could share them with Michael and his family. Recently, my boyfriend proposed to me and we plan to get married in a few months. This time, I truly believe this marriage will lead to my happiness.
William, you consider me family, right? You said I was the only one you could rely on and even handed me the bills, remember? Ah, that. Just acting. I lied because I wanted you to pay. Figured you'd do anything if I called you family. William, my stepson, smirks as he says this to me, who came to visit him in the hospital. Ignoring my shock, Emily, his wife, laughs at me as if I'm a fool. So, you paid for the surgery and now you think you're some kind of hero? Don't flatter yourself. You really think that makes you family? It's clear. They don't consider me family. That alone is enough to make me feel down. But William throws more heartless words at me. You're not needed. You can go home now. I paid for the surgery, got no thanks, and now I learned that calling me family was just a trick to get me to pay. Emily's words, William's dismissal, it's all enough to turn my sadness into anger. I don't need to be family with people like this. Unaware of my growing anger, William waves me away. Don't ever show your face again. You're a stranger to us. We have no plans to interact with you ever again. Fine by me. I'll gladly cut ties with you. Great, that's what I want. Enjoy your lonely life then. I feel foolish for ever wanting to be family with these people. I regret being deceived and paying for the surgery, but I decide to consider it severance pay. If being family means being with people like you, I'm better off alone. Goodbye. I say this and leave the hospital room. My name is Laura. I married Owen, a single father in my late 30s. I used to live a life without much social interaction, but Owen taught me the joy of connecting with people. Therefore, when Owen asked me to marry him, I thought it would be okay if it was with this person. I thought that, even though we weren't related by blood, I could be a real family with William, Owen's son. But it wasn't that easy. Living together, I quickly learned how hard it is to close the gap with someone who won't open up. I had never raised a child. And William was a sensitive teenager when I moved in. I didn't know how to connect with him, and our relationship didn't improve. His answers to my questions were always short. Ah, yeah, whatever. Sometimes he'd even say, "Don't worry about it," curtly dismissing me. At that time, my priority was William, and I was desperate to deepen our relationship. I was trying myself down, rushing things. The person who eased my mind was none other than Owen. I sometimes wonder if I'm being a good father too, really. One evening after dinner, William quickly retreated to his room. When I expressed my concerns, Owen responded like this. Unable to hide my surprise, Owen gave a light laugh. To be honest, ever since William was born, I've never felt like a perfect father. But I've never been good at socializing, so even before worrying about being a mother, I don't know if I'm communicating well. Laura, just be yourself. There's no point in rushing. If you force it, it's not a real family. My husband is right. Forcing a relationship isn't the same as building real trust. So, let's take our time becoming a family. William is going through adolescence. It's a tough time. He'll get frustrated, but someday he'll understand. Yes, you're right. Thank you. My husband's words melt away the pressure that had been weighing on my heart. From that day on, I stopped trying to force a closer relationship with William. I noticed he was slightly more talkative when Owen was around, so I chose those moments to engage him. I think it led to more meaningful responses, but we never really got close. Eventually, William went off to college and never returned home. He would occasionally visit Owen, but never contacted me. He would tell Owen when he was coming, so I would prepare a feast and look forward to his return. But that joy didn't last long. Once William became financially independent, he began to scorn me, acting all high and mighty while living off Dad's money. The first time I heard those words, I thought I must have misheard. I never thought William would say something like that. He had never been honest with me, but sadly, I hadn't misheard. Every time he came home, he belittled me when Owen wasn't around. This continued even after he got married. His wife Emily even joined in. Guess you could only get a guy with kids, huh? How sad for someone so unattractive. Like William, Emily looked down on me when Owen wasn't around. In Owen's presence, she would only talk to him and William, treating me as if I didn't exist. I was already struggling with my relationship with my stepson, and now my daughter-in-law was treating me horribly. I was deeply depressed. But I couldn't talk to Owen about it. He was nearing 70 and battling lung cancer. I didn't want to add to his worries. Despite his fight, Owen passed away at 72. The words William directed at me in my deep sorrow were easy to despair over. Now that Dad's gone, you and I are strangers. He told me this matter-of-factly right after Owen's funeral, when the exhaustion of the past few days hit me all at once. Emily, standing next to him, said nothing but gave me a cold look. I can't believe, I managed to say, but received no reply from either of them. It's been a year since. I've had no contact with William and Emily. Having learned the warmth of being with people, I was stuck in a dark place, unable to move on from the loss of my husband and the shocking words from my stepson. Then one day, I looked at my phone after leaving it unattended for a few hours and saw a flood of missed calls. The caller was William. Seeing dozens of missed calls from my son, who hadn't contacted me in a year, I panicked and called him back. "Hello, Mom. I've been diagnosed with lung cancer and need surgery." What? Hearing the same diagnosis as Owen, I was stunned. William's voice was weak, stirring my anxiety. When I found out I had cancer, I didn't know what to do, and then I thought of you, Mom. This coming from William, who had always despised me, was unexpected. He must have felt vulnerable. I quickly thought of the most reassuring thing to say. "Don't worry, medical treatments are advancing. And you're only 35, you're young and strong. Trust your doctors and focus on getting better." Okay, thank you, Mom. I felt a guilty sense of happiness that my son, who had always rejected me, was now relying on me in his time of need. And for the first time, William said, "Thank you," warming my heart. "Emily is there for you, but if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. I'll visit you in the hospital. Let me know your room number." A few days later, I headed to the hospital room William had told me about. It was a private room, spacious and likely expensive. "How are you feeling?" "Thanks for coming, Mom. I was in pain right after the surgery, but I'm okay now." Though he looked tired, William smiled at me. After a brief chat about his condition, the conversation shifted to the room. "I can't sleep well around strangers, so I chose a private room, but the cheaper ones were all taken." "So you ended up in this big room, but at least you can rest." "Yeah, but it's more expensive than I thought." Saying this, William handed me the bill. It listed surgery and hospitalization costs, along with the room charge, totaling over $10,000. William and Emily, who's a housewife, don't have much savings. Already physically drained, William looked emotionally strained as well, tearfully asking for my help. "Mom, I'm sorry for calling you a stranger before, but now you're the only one I can ask. Can you pay this bill for me? You're the only family I have left." "I understand. I'll take care of the bill on my way out, so stop worrying and focus on resting." I had been wondering how I could help ever since I got the call, so I immediately agreed to William's shaky request. "Really? Of course. You're my precious son, and you've been through a lot. Let me do this for you." I said this and paid the bill at the reception desk before heading home. I visited William again the next day, but my hope for another heartfelt conversation was quickly shattered. "Strangers are not allowed in here." As I entered the room, Emily, who had arrived before me, yelled this at me. From yesterday's interaction, I thought William considered me family. Surely, William will stand up for me. That's what I thought. But William, lying in bed, showed no sign of intervening. Growing impatient, I couldn't help but ask William, "William, you consider me family, don't you? You said I was the only one you could ask for help and even gave me the bill, right?" "Ah, that just an act." "I lied because I wanted you to pay. I thought if I called you family, you'd do anything for me." William twisted his mouth into a distasteful grin as he answered, "So, you think you're a lifesaver just because you paid for the surgery? Don't flatter yourself. That doesn't make you family." I realized I was still not considered family. That alone was enough to make me feel down. But William threw more heartless words at me. "You're not needed. You can go home now." Not receiving any thanks for covering the surgery costs, being told that calling me family was just a trick to get me to pay, and now hearing "you're not needed" from my son, all of this turned my sadness into anger. I don't need to be family with people like this. Unaware of my anger, William waved me away. "You don't have to show your face ever again. You're a stranger to me. I have no plans to interact with you for the rest of my life." "Fine. If that's how you feel, I'll gladly cut ties with you." "Great, that's what I want. Enjoy your lonely life then." I felt indifferent about my desperate attempts to become family with these people. I regretted being fooled and paying for the surgery, but I decided to consider it severance money. If being family with people like you is my alternative, I'd rather be alone. Goodbye. I left the hospital room. Despite cutting ties with my son and his wife, my heart felt lighter and more refreshed than it had in years. Then, a few days later, William called again. "Come to the hospital now." Even over the phone, I could tell William was extremely irritated. "You're the one who said never to show my face again, remember?" "Shut up. This is all your fault. They said I could finally be discharged, but then they gave me another bill. Why didn't you pay the full amount?" Apparently, William had no money and couldn't pay the bill. He thought he didn't have to pay anything because I had covered all the costs. "I paid everything that was on the bill you gave me. I don't see why you're complaining." "Then why do I have to be billed again?" An angry William continued to complain loudly. It seems he chose the expensive private room thinking I would cover the costs. "You said you'd pay for me once. Keep your promise." He insisted he shouldn't have to pay. I decided to give him a reality check. "I agreed to pay for the bill you gave me. I never said I'd cover any future bills." "Huh?" He seemed not to understand, his voice tinged with anger. I explained so even William could understand. "Hospitals usually bill at the end of the month. You were hospitalized at the end of the month, so the bill you gave me was for last month. The new bill is for this month." "I never heard that." "They probably explained it when they gave you last month's bill. You likely ignored it, thinking it didn't concern you." "What? Did you know the bill wasn't the full amount? Why didn't you tell me?" "I was planning to pay for your discharge fees too, but I can't see myself paying for someone who isn't even family." "Then come to the hospital right now and settle the bill. If you do, I'll consider you family." At William's words, I let out a deep sigh. How can someone asking for a favor act so arrogant? I was beyond angry. I was dumbfounded. "I already told you, I'd rather be alone than be family with someone like you." Even after my firm refusal, William persisted. "Are you sure? If you're not family with me, you'll be truly alone. No one will want to deal with an old person like you, and you can't even support yourself." "What are you talking about? I've been working all along." "Don't lie. You've been at home all the time. You've always relied on Dad's money, and you're still living off his inheritance." "I was at home because I work from home. I'm a writer, you know." "What?" For a moment, William was speechless, but he quickly yelled, "That's a lie. I've never seen you work." "That's because I always stopped working to spend time with you, to become a family, but it was all in vain." "So, you're really a writer? But you're probably not a successful one. I've never heard of any writer with your name." "I publish under a pen name. Success is subjective, but I've certainly earned more than Owen." "What?" Faced with the reality, William was at a loss for words. After a long silence, I said, "Are we done here?" and was about to hang up. Then I heard William say, "Wait! I was wrong. I always thought you married Dad for his money. I didn't know you were earning your own." "That's good. The misunderstanding is cleared up. Goodbye." Wait! You're my lifesaver and my family. You can even live with me, so please help me." Who was it that called me a stranger and kicked me out of the hospital room? That was... I couldn't make out what William was mumbling, but I didn't need to hear it. "You're the one who said never show your face again, and I have no plans to interact with you for the rest of my life, right? I'm fine on my own, so you should rely on someone else who's unrelated to you." With that, I hung up. I ignored all subsequent calls from William and blocked his number. Afterward, William withdrew almost all of his savings to pay the remaining bills. He needed ongoing chemotherapy to prevent cancer recurrence, and it seemed his finances were getting worse. Emily lost her patience with him when the money ran out and apparently had an affair. Now he is in debt due to a divorce settlement. William is too busy with work and hospital visits to take care of himself, so in exchange for not demanding compensation, Emily takes care of household chores. Both are constantly irritated in a life without love or money, and it seems people are gradually disappearing from their lives. It's a fitting outcome for two people who easily called someone they considered family a stranger. As for me, I had been writing dark works since my husband passed away. But this experience inspired me to write a powerful new piece that's been well received by both editors and readers. I've regained the sense of purpose that I lost when my husband died. I plan to continue producing works that meet my readers' expectations.
My name is Olivia. I'm a 37-year-old mom working part-time while raising 2 daughters. I live with my 10-year-old eldest daughter, my 8-year-old second daughter, and my husband Liam. I always thought our peaceful life would continue as we watch our daughters grow up. But then something happened. After dinner, when the girls had gone to bed, Liam began to speak seriously while having a nightcap. Wait, Sophia is getting a divorce? Yeah. Seems like she found out her husband has debt. That's tough. Sophia is Liam's sister. She got married about 6 years ago and has a 4-year-old kid. So she's going to be a single mom? Yeah, she's moving near us next month. Can you help her out? I immediately nodded my agreement. Divorce is hard enough, let alone raising a child alone. I know firsthand how challenging it is to raise kids. That's why I wanted to help. Let's support Sophia as a family. Liam was pleased that I agreed so readily. Little did I know what was coming. The next month, Sophia and her son Ethan moved into an apartment about a 5-minute walk from our house. On the day of the move, Liam and I invited Sophia and Ethan for a little housewarming. Our eldest daughter Emma and our second daughter Ava seemed to enjoy Ethan's company. It's been tough for you, Sophia. She gulped down her beer and said, Marriage is a nightmare. I regret it so much. If I hadn't gotten pregnant with Ethan, I'd never have married that irresponsible man. I held my tongue, considering she must be exhausted from the divorce. Come to think of it, Sophia was the type to say whatever was on her mind. I remember her candid nature. She told Liam, You're marrying someone this plain? During a family meeting. Well, at that time, my mother-in-law, Isabella, who was right next to me, scolded her harshly. Well, if you need anything, just tell us, Liam said, beaming at her. I'm lucky I moved near you. I was thinking of going back to Mom's, but she can be too much sometimes. Sophia and Liam's mother, Isabella, has a strained relationship, mostly because Isabella scolds her. If you need anything, call Olivia. Right, Olivia? Yes, just tell me, I replied, but I felt uneasy. I was going to become her personal assistant. I had a feeling like that. That premonition turned out to be true. The day after Sophia moved in, the doorbell rang while I was preparing dinner. Emma, can you get that? My eldest daughter, who was watching TV, opened the door. Mom, it's Sophia and Ethan. What? Could it be something urgent? As I walked to the door, Sophia blurted out, I'm broke right now. We came to have dinner. I can't prepare anything right away. I'm sorry. But you said I could come anytime if I had trouble. She gave me a sulky look. How could she show up like this? Certainly, it was me who said, help yourself anytime. That day, I had food delivered just for Sophia and Ethan and looked after them at our house. The suggestion came from Liam, who had just returned from work. Sophia's been through a lot. Treat her to some good food. He's so indulgent with Sophia, honestly. After dinner, Sophia and Ethan took baths at our place and then went home. Sophia, could you give us a heads up next time? We need to prepare too. I said this as they were leaving, but it was Liam who took issue with me. Hey, Olivia, Sophia is having a tough time raising a child on her own. Don't say that to her. He glared at me, then turned to Sophia. Don't worry about anything, Sophia. You can lean on us as much as you need to. Thanks, Liam. And Olivia, I'll be counting on you more from now on. True to her word, Sophia came over nearly every day to eat dinner and take baths. You could at least take baths at home, I think to myself. But she persists, saying, it saves on utilities. Perhaps her frugal living has increased because Liam's debt was the reason for their divorce? Either way, isn't this a bit too much? I've protested to Liam multiple times. Isn't she coming over too often? Sophia is struggling, raising a kid alone. But Emma and Ava are also getting inconvenienced because of her constant visits. When she comes over, Sophia leaves Ethan with Emma and Ava and spends all her time watching TV in the living room. Emma and Ava also want to watch TV, but they're too busy caring for Ethan. I've told her multiple times to take care of Ethan herself, but she brushes it off, saying, I need a break too. The real problem is Liam. He coddles Sophia so much that she feels no need to do anything, all while having no consideration for me, his wife. Although Liam is spoiled for his own sister, he has no intention of pampering me, his wife. Can we limit Sophia and Ethan's visits to only our days off? That was my non-negotiable term, to protect Emma and Ava's daily lives. Liam had a bitter look on his face, but said, You're a surprisingly unpleasant woman. I understand. He said something unnecessary and understood. Liam reluctantly agreed, calling me surprisingly unpleasant. But then he started going over to Sophia's apartment almost every day himself. Emma and Ava began to worry, asking, Is Dad not coming home again tonight? Did you and Dad have a fight? It's unacceptable for him to be away from home every day when he's not on a business trip. Frustrated, I called Liam's phone. Where are you? I'm at Sophia's place. Just gave Ethan a bath. He said this without a hint of shame. Have you ever given your daughter a bath? I'd reached my limit and decided to have a serious talk with Liam over the weekend. I told him how his absence was causing Emma and Ava anxiety. I didn't want to create tension between us, so I asked him to at least reduce the frequency of his visits. His reply? Fine. You make meals for Sophia and Ethan then. Enough for 3 meals. Wait, what? Sophia is too busy to prepare food. You should help her. Hold on, she's not working, so why can't she? Sophia is still recovering from the trauma of her divorce. Plus, she feels coldness coming from you. You really should be more sympathetic. My mistrust of Liam, who was oddly supportive of Sophia, intensified. Making 3 meals a day is impossible. I'm already up at 5 a.m. taking care of the house. If I have to make 3 meals for 2 people, I'd have to wake up 2 hours earlier. Why don't you just wake up at 3 a.m. then? Excuse me? I have a part-time job, you know. Don't act so high and mighty over a part-time job. You're probably just gossiping with other housewives. Don't joke around. It's not happening. Absolutely not. You want a divorce or something? The word divorce suddenly came from Liam, and I was shocked. Divorce? What do you mean? If you can't listen to me, then we should divorce. You said you'd help Sophia initially. What's with this attitude? You're betraying me. That's my line. Who's fed up with Liam and Sophia taking advantage of my good intentions? I'm the one who's disgusted. Was he always this unreasonable? The conversation ended unresolved that day, and we went to bed in awkward silence. The next day, Liam declared to Emma and Ava, You guys will be the ones supporting Sophia and Ethan from now on. Mom says she won't help because she's mean, but you guys are different, right? Helping people in need is just common sense. Emma and Ava looked stunned at their dad's unreasonable proposal. When you get back from school, go straight to Sophia's house. Help with shopping and chores. Don't come home until you're done helping. Got it? Unbelievable. Is Liam trying to turn Emma and Ava into household servants because he thinks I'm useless? This is just too much. Emma and Ava said, Dad, we don't get what you're saying. Mom, we're leaving, and left the house. They probably decided it's okay to ignore what their absent dad says. Liam said, "You should tell Emma and Ava too. Since you won't help Sophia, it can't be helped." I've reached my limit. Both Liam and Sophia need a lesson. That day, I changed my part-time shift and visited my in-laws' house. "Oh, Olivia, what brings you here so suddenly?" "Isabella, sorry to bother you on your day off. The thing is..." I was relieved to find Isabella, who happened to be off work. I took a deep breath to calm myself and explained the situation. Tears started to flow from my eyes. "Oh my, what happened? Did something painful happen?" Yes, something painful and sad did happen. I confided everything to Isabella. Sophia might be afraid of her mom, Isabella, but I've always loved her. Isabella, who lost her husband early and raised 2 kids alone, is strong, resilient, and kind. I came to this house today believing she would help me. Isabella listened to my story in silence, her face turning red. "So that's what happened. My foolish children have done something terrible." "I didn't mean to blame you, Isabella. Leave it to me. I'll take care of them." I couldn't help but chuckle at Isabella's words, who loves historical dramas. "You finally smiled," Isabella said, looking at me kindly. "You looked so distressed when you came, I was worried. But now that you've smiled, I feel a bit relieved." "Isabella, let's go teach those kids a lesson. Get pumped!" Encouraged by Isabella, I stood up. "Sophia, we're coming in!" Isabella and I visited Sophia's apartment. Mom? What? What's up? What do you mean, what's up? What's with this messy room? What have you been doing all day?" "The room is a mess, with trash and belongings scattered everywhere. Even the bed is unmade. The sink smells bad, apparently filled with food waste. Is Ethan being raised in a place like this? But Ethan isn't in the room." "Where's Ethan?" Isabella immediately asks on my behalf. He's at the daycare center." "Since when? Which daycare center?" I immediately ask back. After all, daycare centers around here are highly competitive. It's hard to get in midway, and I had a tough time getting Emma and Ava in. Plus, I haven't heard anything about this from Liam. Something's fishy. That's none of your business." Sophia snaps back at me, but Isabella counters. "No, it is our business. Are you sure it's a daycare center? Are you lying?" Cornered by Isabella, Sophia finally gives in. She's been leaving Ethan with an acquaintance during the day. "What? An acquaintance? Can you trust them?" "I don't know. They have a 4-year-old too, so I thought it would be fine." Sophia's irresponsibility is glaring. "You idiot! Go get Ethan right now!" Isabella shouts, and Sophia rushes out to bring Ethan back. "What's wrong with you? You've been causing Olivia so much trouble. What's your deal?" "Well, Liam said Olivia would do whatever he says, so I could take advantage of her." She says this without a hint of remorse. Wait a minute. Is that true? Huh? Did Liam really say that? That I could be exploited? Yes, he said you're like his servant. Even Emma and Ava could be used if needed. Unbelievable. That man, thinking of his wife and Emma and Ava like that. Isabella is also at a loss for words, but it's a good thing Sophia talks too much. Of course, Sophia is problematic, but it's clear that Liam is the root cause. Our target is Liam. Isabella and I waited for Liam to return at Sophia's apartment. "Sophia, I'm home!" Huh? Liam freezes when he sees Isabella waiting in the room. "Mom, why?" "Sit down. We've been waiting." Isabella slaps the chair in front of her. "Whoa, what's going on?" "Sit down now!" At Isabella's command, Liam straightens up. "You've been doing whatever you want, haven't you?" As Isabella starts, Liam glares at me. "You told Mom, didn't you?" "Shut up! Both you and Sophia are disgraceful as human beings." Both Liam and Sophia are scolded by Mom and look utterly dejected. It's clear that they're really afraid of Mom. "Olivia, what do you want to do from now on?" Isabella asks me in a calm voice. The decision was already made. "Actually, Emma and Ava are at my parents' house right now." What? Why would you do that without telling me? You're the one who tried to make Emma and Ava into Sophia's personal servants. I saw that as a danger and acted as any parent should to protect their children. So, let's separate for a while. Separate? Just like that? It's not sudden. You've hardly been home except on your days off. And you were the first to mention divorce, remember? Any objections? That was just talk. I won't agree to a separation. He's determined to reject my proposal. That's when Isabella speaks up. If you divorce, I'll be on Olivia's side. I'll handle all the legalities. Only if you really go through with it, though. Isabella explains the legal process of divorce, what to be cautious about in great detail. Yes, Isabella, who loves historical dramas, is an active lawyer. Even past 60, she's still practicing. It's clear why Sophia and Liam fear her. She's been a strong advocate for clients who are suffering from life's injustices. Whether it's her daughter or son, Isabella will stand for justice without compromise. I wonder how such selfish children came from someone as straightforward as her. I'm on Olivia's side. Justice will prevail. No, I'll make sure it prevails. I had no other response but to applaud Isabella. After that, Liam and I separated for 3 months and then divorced. I thought he'd refuse, but he agreed after Isabella talked to him. I don't know what they discussed, but from Liam's words, I don't want to make an enemy of Mom. I can imagine it was a tough conversation. Isabella later told me, "You don't want to make an enemy out of a lawyer." Liam probably realized he had no chance of winning if Isabella, a skilled lawyer, was on my side. Well, it was a clear win for Isabella. My last words to Liam were, "How does it feel to be overthrown by your servant?" Liam said nothing and just looked down. Had he been looking down on me all along? I never saw it that way, but you never know when someone's true nature will reveal itself. As for Sophia, she lost financial support from Isabella after the divorce. There's government assistance, so you'll manage. Stop being spoiled. If you're broke, work and be a responsible mom. After hearing this from Isabella, Sophia seems to have changed her ways and is raising Ethan while working part-time. After the divorce, I switched from part-time to full-time employment. Part-time income wasn't enough to provide a decent life for Emma and Ava. I was offered to take a test for a full-time position at work and luckily passed. Maybe God gave me this chance because of the hardships I faced. I still keep in touch with Isabella even after the divorce. "Grandma, I got 100 on my test today." "Grandma, I drew a picture in art class. I'll hang it up for you." Emma and Ava love Isabella. Though we're not related by blood, I hope this relationship continues. Olivia, please continue to be friends. Isabella, welcome. After all, Isabella and I have become very close. I'll strive to be a strong and resilient mom like her. Inspired by Isabella's lively interactions with Emma and Ava, I vowed to give my all in the life ahead of me.
What's the deal here? This place is filthy. You're obviously using your illness as a way to slack off on housework. You know how much I like things clean. Normally, you should come home even from the hospital to clean and greet your husband. The man I call my husband is likely not human. He must be a devil or something. Otherwise, how could he say such absurd things to his wife who is in the hospital for cancer? But what this clueless man doesn't know is that he is about to hear. "I'm sorry, but your wife just passed away." These words are merely the prologue to the hell that awaits him. A message from the doctor. My name is Bella, a 32-year-old office worker. I've been married to my husband Ronald for almost 2 years, introduced by a mutual friend. I wish I could say we have a smooth marital life, but that's far from true. Work is fulfilling, and I'm genuinely happy when my efforts are recognized. The job is going well, but these issues within the household? When I came home tired from work, Ronald, who gets home before me, is the one to greet me. As I change into loungewear, I ask, "Is a ready-made dinner okay?" Ronald sighs. You're cutting corners just because you work. Look at this. He shows me a picture of a lavish dinner spread. By the way, he's shown it to me countless times before. This all began when Ronald attended his high school reunion about a year ago. He changed little by little after coming back, influenced by something. He showed me a picture of trendy rooms saying, "I want to unify the furniture color and make the room look like this." Apparently, he went to a friend's lavish high-rise apartment after the reunion and started envying his friend's lifeless, chic room. However, that friend is a young and successful businessman. We don't make enough to maintain a lifestyle on par with his. Next, he suggests moving to an apartment that would cost 3 times our current rent. So, how are we going to pay for that? Ronald replies to my incredulous face, "You're good at budgeting, Bella. We're both working, so we'll figure it out, right?" I finally lost it with my husband, who just chuckled dismissively. Listen, enough is enough. I don't know if you're aiming for a luxurious lifestyle or what, but have you ever heard of living within your means? You talk about managing the household budget, but what about the money for the beer you're drinking right now? From now on, pay for it from your own pocket money. I glared at him sternly. He seemed frightened and sad. Wow, calm down. I was just making a light comment. It's a buzzkill when you can't even take a joke. He muttered under his breath, but I knew he was absolutely serious. Our fights increased, and I started experiencing stomach pain more frequently. At first, I thought it was just stress, but then something alarming happened to my body. Unexplained bleeding that wouldn't stop. I went to a nearby hospital and was diagnosed with uterine cancer. I shivered involuntarily, even though it wasn't cold. The doctor then asked me, "Do you plan on having children in the future?" I was in such a bad condition that preserving my uterus was unlikely. Removal was the best option. I'll discuss it with my husband. I couldn't stop the tears as I drove home. Losing my uterus meant I could never have children again. How will Ronald react? He loves kids. What if he leaves me? When I got home, my husband and I had a long, heartfelt discussion about the diagnosis, treatment, and how he felt about it all. He was deeply shocked, but we made a decision. I took a leave of absence from work and began my treatment. Ultimately, we chose to proceed with a hysterectomy followed by chemotherapy. On the day of the surgery, my husband took time off work to accompany me to the hospital. Even though I wouldn't be home for a while, he seemed oddly cheerful, which struck me as strange. After enduring an 8-hour major surgery, I lost my uterus. The doctor explained that I was at the lowest stage of the disease. During my hospital stay, co-workers and friends came to visit. When a friend with a child came, my heart ached with guilt. Walt and Amelia, my father-in-law and mother-in-law, who lived nearby, also visited. Amelia followed her words of sympathy with, "We understand it's hard for you, Bella, but going forward, please manage the household and finances well." Walt immediately intervened. "Not now, Amelia. Bella, don't worry about it."
I didn't understand their intentions at the time. As for my husband, Ronald, every time he came to visit, he was oddly upbeat.
"You're going to be surprised when you get out, Bella. Just look forward to it."
I had thought there might be a surprise waiting for me based on what my husband said. But honestly, I was just happy that he visited me in the hospital. After a while, I got a temporary discharge from the hospital. I was thrilled to return home after so long, but I realized I would have to be readmitted soon for chemotherapy. My husband picked me up and said,
"Don't be shocked when you see the house, okay?"
A feeling of unease washed over me. What? What is this? The moment I walked in, I was stunned. Our home had undergone a complete transformation. What used to be a light, airy space with white tones was now dark and chic, filled with black furniture.
My favorite sofa, table, and even the rug were gone. In their place were pieces that catered entirely to my husband's taste. Even the appliances were new and black, as if coordinated to match everything else. When I froze in shock, my husband gleefully said, "Cool, right? I did this all by myself. Oh, we can exchange the wallpaper back when we leave, so that'll be an extra expense." I felt like collapsing. I suddenly remembered something and rushed to the bathroom. I rushed to our bedroom, only to find it completely altered too. "Where is my dresser?" Caught off guard, my husband stumbled for words. Sorry, I got carried away and, threw it away." I exploded in anger. "Threw it away? Are you kidding me? I've told you how important that dresser is to me, Ronald. Bring it back right now." Every shout intensified the pain from my surgeries. Ronald paused before blurting out, "Well, what's thrown away is thrown away. Deal with it. So annoying." Then he stormed out. Alone, in this unfamiliar space, I sank to the floor. I couldn't hold back the tears. That dresser was a cherished gift from my mom when I first moved out for my job. My parents divorced when I was in elementary school, and I'd lived with my mom ever since. She passed away in a car accident not long after I got married. That dresser was irreplaceable to me, and I had told Ronald many times. Whether he understood or simply forgot, the fact remained that I had lost something dear to me. Between my hospital stays, life became a living nightmare. I had been looking forward to coming home, but my husband continued to be in a bad mood. He barely spoke to me, and when he did, he'd say, "You're home all day. At least do some housework. Look at this dust. Are you really okay with this? It's embarrassing for a woman." "I can't. I'm in a recovery phase and need to rest," I responded. "How about you do some things for yourself for once? You only clean what's visible, Ronald. You could at least clean the drain or the toilet sometimes." From the next day, my husband started to be passive-aggressive. He would deliberately avoid washing my clothes. And when he bought food, he'd eat it in front of me, flaunting it. Tired of his childish behavior, I relied on friends for groceries. On the day of my readmission, my husband didn't accompany me. I went to the hospital alone. The chemotherapy was more grueling than I had imagined. The nausea was one thing, but seeing my carefully maintained hair fall out was deeply unsettling. And my husband? Shortly after my admission, he left for an extended business trip. I thought he might call to check on me, but he never did. One day, my mobile phone started ringing repeatedly. By this point, I had no energy to talk to my husband. Just as I was hesitating to pick up, he called the hospital. Switching the call to speaker, I heard him yell, "What the hell is this? The house is a mess. You're obviously just using your illness as an excuse to avoid housework. I like a clean house. You should be welcoming me home by cleaning." Even the nurse who handed me the phone looked distressed. To my surprise, it wasn't me who responded to my husband's ridiculous words. "Unfortunately, your wife has just..." "What?" "She just finished her discharge briefing and is about to handle some paperwork. Could you please not disrupt her with your nonsense?" My husband's flustered voice came through the phone. "If you'd been listening, who do you think you are? You could just clean yourself. I've been a doctor for many years, and I've never met someone as unreasonable as you. You're annoying." The attending doctor promptly hung up. The doctor quickly composed himself. "I apologize for my outburst. I have a daughter, and I got emotional." "Don't worry about it. Thank you, doctor. I plan on divorcing him anyway, so it's no big deal." Upon hearing my response, the doctor smiled, clearly relieved. "Well, that's good to hear." After getting discharged from the hospital, I headed straight to a particular place. Not long after, my husband Ronald burst into the room. His face flushed. "Bella, why are you here?" Seeing me, he didn't offer a word of concern. He just stood there frozen. It's Bella's discharge day, so we came to pick her up. Now sit down, Ronald. Amelia, sitting beside me, said coldly. It looked like Ronald was hiding something. He blinked rapidly, visibly shaken. Don't you think you owe Bella and us an apology? Amelia said, but Ronald remained silent. Ronald, you asked us for financial help, claiming that Bella was overspending. Isn't that all a lie? Walt's furious voice echoed throughout the room. Ronald had been lying, and it was a pretty nasty lie at that. During my second hospital stay, Walt and Amelia had told me something. Bella, we know it's not the best time, but we're not exactly flush with cash either. We hope this will be the last time we have to lend you money. Amelia said with a concerned expression. What are you talking about? We looked at each other and realized for the first time that Ronald had been lying outrageously. It turned out Ronald had been getting financial help from Walt and Amelia, claiming that my overspending was straining our budget. Feeling emboldened, he'd approached them for money several times. If it's hard for you to say, I can talk to Bella about it. Amelia had offered, but Ronald had flatly refused. Naturally, his story was pure fabrication. Even Walt and Amelia had grown suspicious of Ronald, who kept asking for money while I was hospitalized. Then he apparently pleaded for help again, claiming my hospital bills were astronomical. Upon hearing this, I instantly knew where the money was going. I said to Walt and Amelia, Once you step into our home, you'll quickly see what Ronald spent the money on. I handed them the house key. As expected, Walt and Amelia came back to the hospital room with astonished looks on their face. What's up with that room? How much did it cost to change it like that? I didn't hold back when I told them that Ronald had acted on his own without consulting me. I explained about the terrible treatment I received during my temporary discharge from the hospital, and said I had no intention of continuing our married life, and was planning to divorce him. The most frustrating part was that he threw away the dresser my mom had bought for me. I'm not coming back. Amelia grabbed my hand. Her eyes filled with tears. The dresser? He threw away the dresser from your mom? Ronald will pay for this. Amelia became very emotional. In fact, Amelia and I had an awkward start. But during a visit to her family home, I had admired a beautiful chest. It's lovely, I commented. Amelia beamed. Actually, this chest was passed down from my grandmother to Mom, and from Mom to me. When I told her about my cherished dresser, she responded, That's so wonderful. Keep it close. I don't have a daughter, so if you want, this chest is yours. I was really happy when she told me that. I have no intention of continuing as a couple with Ronald. Think about it. If the roles were reversed, I'd want to slap you right now. Ronald, now yelling, responded, Divorce is extreme. You should be grateful. I made that room stylish. I have to live in a room that's not even to my taste. I shot back. It's way too dark. Do you realize how depressing that is? Also, didn't you plan to use our joint savings for it? But couldn't because it's in my name. So you had to borrow from your parents? It seemed that I was right. Ronald's face turned bright red, and he was speechless. We had a dual income arrangement. Living expenses went into an account in Ronald's name, while savings went into an account in my name. The primary purpose of those savings was for when we had a child. It seemed like when I got cancer, Ronald thought, We can't have kids anyway. Might as well use that money for whatever I want. I was heartbroken by the situation. Can't you see how much I've cherished Bella? How can you even talk about divorce? This is unfair. I looked at my sobbing husband with cold eyes. That's when Amelia, who was sitting next to me, chimed in. Someone who really cares wouldn't say such awful things. It's no big deal if the house gets dusty when no one's there. Walt and I were right there when you made that ridiculous call to the hospital. We were so disappointed we could cry. Walt's face was flushed red, staring down at my husband. It was a relief to have reasonable people on my side. I've finished my treatments, but that doesn't mean I won't relapse. Ronald, you don't even seem to care about my well-being, let alone my hair loss and frail body. All you care about is saving your own skin. That's why this isn't working. I've supported you, Ronald, but who's going to support me? My husband lowered his gaze and said nothing more. After that, we finalized our divorce. Thanks to Walt and Amelia's intervention, Ronald wasn't pleased, but the division of assets went largely in my favor. Reluctantly, Ronald repaid the money he had borrowed from Waltz and Amelia. I was shocked to learn it was a whopping $10,000. Turns out Ronald couldn't afford to keep the apartment we'd been so particular about, and he had to move out. The floors were scratched from dragging furniture, and there were even holes in the walls. Even worse, it turned out he had replaced the wallpaper without permission. He insisted these damages were there when we moved in, but backed down when the management company produced move-in photos. By the way, I was the one who provided those photos. So it looks like Ronald incurred some repair costs when he moved out. It wasn't a huge sum, but he couldn't even pay that. He asked Walt and Amelia for help, but they disowned him and kicked him out, Amelia later told me. He's in a cheap apartment now, struggling with debt. I still think he should have just made do with what he had, instead of living beyond his means. I heard from a friend, who works at the same company as my ex-husband, that he's now viewed as the creep who tormented his sick wife, especially among the female staff. He brought it upon himself. He'll regret it for the rest of his life. As for me, I'm savoring living alone again after years, all while keeping a close eye on my health. I plan to return to work once I feel more stable physically. My boss has been understanding, telling me to take it at my own pace. I'm so grateful. I still catch up with Walt and Amelia from time to time. It's really great, that Mom's dresser came back to you, Amelia says during one of our phone chats. I nodded in agreement. When I moved, I took some stuff I didn't need anymore to a thrift shop. While the items were being appraised, I froze. Wait a minute. There it was. My dresser that my mom had given me. Whether someone found it in the dump and brought it in didn't matter to me. It may not be a pricey piece, but there's no dresser that could replace it for me. A few days later, the dresser, now cleaned up a bit, arrived at my new place. Etched in small letters on the back corner of the dresser were the words, Bella, never give up, penned by my late mother. Life has its ups and downs, but remembering Mom's words has kept me pushing through. And that's not going to change. I'm all set to live my new life with strength and joy, without backing down.
Did you finish moving? You're not going to back out, right? I'll be gone by the end of today. I'll miss you. Who's going to be my stress relief now? She said what she wanted to say and hung up the phone. I couldn't help but look forward to how quickly her bubbly mood would plummet. My name is Aria, and I'm 29 years old. I'm currently living in a high-rise apartment near Boston with my parents. Up until a year ago, I was married, but we divorced because of my husband's infidelity. I moved back in with my parents, who live in my childhood home. At that time, my family home was old and cramped, so we all agreed that it was a good time to move. Now we're all living in a more spacious, high-rise apartment. I have an older brother named Samuel, who moved out of our family home quite a while ago. When we moved to the high-rise, Samuel said to me, "You're really crafty buying a high-rise apartment with your divorce settlement." But I didn't let that bother me. I've been living comfortably here with my parents. I have a job that allows me to work remotely, and so far, life has been pretty smooth. Samuel never visits home, and it seems like he doesn't even update our parents on his life. I know he's working somewhere, but the details are unclear. I occasionally call to update him about how things are going with our parents and me, but he always seems disinterested and ends the call quickly. To be frank, I question whether he's really acting like a responsible older son, but I never imagined that Samuel would soon bring an incredible problem into our lives. One day, my phone rang, and unusually, it was Samuel calling. Wondering what was going on, I answered the call. Samuel, what's going on? I asked, and Samuel sounded unusually smug. Well, I'm getting married soon, he said. Surprised, I couldn't help but blurt out, what? Samuel has always been single, and I've never heard him talk about any romantic relationships. So I had assumed Samuel would stay single forever. Who are you marrying? Someone from work. I'll bring her over on my next day off, so let mom and dad know. Later. Just like that, he hung up the phone. I stood there stunned for a moment, wondering what kind of woman would marry Samuel. I couldn't even begin to imagine. Samuel isn't exactly the nicest guy, and he's pretty reckless with money. Whoever she is, she'll have to be pretty strong-willed to put up with him. Well, he did say he'd bring her over on his next day off, so I guess I'll find out what she's like then. Mixed feelings of anxiety and concern, I waited for the next day off. On Sunday, Samuel showed up at our family home with his fiancée. This is Scarlett, the woman I'm marrying. The soon-to-be my sister-in-law, Scarlett, had a flashy look that was complemented by her makeup. When introduced to me and my parents, she greeted us with a smile. So, you must be Arya. I've heard a lot about you. What have you heard? I asked, a bit taken aback. Oh, various things, Scarlett said, with a suggestive smile. Something about that didn't sit well with me, and I couldn't shake that uneasy feeling afterward. But Scarlett and Samuel, after their cursory greetings to my parents, started saying, Wow, was this high-rise apartment always this spacious? Right? What a fabulous high-rise. Scarlett seemed genuinely interested and began to explore various parts of the house. My parents were baffled by their behavior. After walking around the high-rise apartment, the couple eventually said, "See you later," and left. 3 days later, Samuel told me they had officially registered their marriage. Something didn't sit right with me. Despite all his talk about me being divorced and living alone at my parents' house, there were no signs that they would have a wedding ceremony. Given how much Samuel cares about his public image, I wondered why they wouldn't have a wedding. Samuel's had a steady job for years, and if Scarlett also works at the same company, they should have some savings. When I asked Samuel about it, he said, "We're just too busy right now. We plan to have the ceremony when things settle down." While I reluctantly accepted that explanation, what really bothered me was when Samuel said, "Be at home on your next day off. There's something important I need to discuss." Something about Samuel's important talk gave me a bad feeling, so I spent my day off filled with a sense of unease. On the next holiday, Samuel and Scarlett came over to my parents' house. Samuel, after brief pleasantries, started saying something outrageous. "Actually, we've been thinking about moving into this house." This caught both me and my parents, Thomas and Natalie, off guard. Scarlett, smiling, said, "Well, this house is so spacious, isn't it? There's a large, unused room. If you let us use that room, that would be enough. Wouldn't it be helpful for Thomas and Natalie to have people around who can assist with various things?" In a hurry, I said, that empty room is actually reserved for guests?" To which Samuel responded, "Guests? Do you even have guests in this house? From what I see, you're not using that room at all. It wouldn't be a problem for us to use it, right?" "But, Arya," Scarlett abruptly interrupted me by calling my name. "Technically, you shouldn't even be living in this house, right? Do you think you have the right to refuse us moving in?" Although Scarlett was smiling, her words were loaded with pressure. Was my bad feeling all along about this hidden malice in Scarlett? Even though neither my parents nor I had agreed, Samuel and Scarlett started moving their stuff into our home the very next day. In no time, the house was filled with Samuel and Scarlett's belongings. "Well, moving all our stuff in does make it a bit cramped." Hearing Samuel mutter, Scarlett added, "Yeah, if only there were a spare room to put our stuff in." "Oh wait, isn't there an empty room we could use?" "An empty room?" "Oh, you know the one. The room where Arya, who doesn't even work, spends all day doing nothing but sleeping. Basically a waste of space." "Ah, got it." Their conversation and laughter reached my ears clearly from my bedroom. They must be saying it loud enough for me to hear on purpose. Scarlett, my sister-in-law, started to harass me more and more. Come mealtime, Scarlett would never miss an opportunity to hurl insults at me, like, "Isn't it embarrassing to hole up in this house at your age? Why don't you earn some money for a change?" I started eating meals in my room to avoid her. This only made me retreat to my room even more, which gave Scarlett more reason to treat me like trash. I assumed that since Samuel and his wife had moved in, they would be contributing to the household expenses, but it turns out they hadn't contributed a single dollar. Shocked, I said, "Shouldn't you give some money to Dad and Mom, being the eldest son and all?" Samuel and his wife retorted, "Who are you to talk? You're not doing anything either. You should be grateful we're even living with you." Well, if we give money to Thomas and the others, your living expenses will come out of that too, right? Why should we have to cover your costs? Besides, you're this old, divorced, unemployed, and still living with your parents? You can't even show your face in public. Aren't you ashamed? She wouldn't even entertain the idea. I sighed, realizing this was getting nowhere. Apparently, Samuel and his wife are keeping all their earnings to themselves. Later in the evening, just as I was about to take a shower, I had an unfortunate run-in with Scarlett. Scarlett said, "Excuse me, you're not thinking of going in before me, are you? Why should I have to go in after you?" I left without saying a word. Then Scarlett, feeling snubbed, shouted at my retreating back, "How long do you plan on mooching off this house? Just leave already! Stop being a parasite, you piece of trash!" At that moment, I finally made up my mind. Absolutely unforgivable. I heard from my parents that Samuel and his wife are going on a 1-week trip to Aspen, Colorado next week. Upon hearing the news, I thought, this is my chance. I informed Samuel and his wife that I would be moving out during their absence. Upon hearing this, Samuel and his wife said, "Finally leaving, huh? Make sure not to leave any junk behind. Get out quickly." "So, Arya, you're moving? Sad." "Just kidding, of course. It's about time. Having you around is like hosting toxic waste. Get out as soon as possible." They were ecstatic. Before telling Samuel and his wife about the move, I had made a proposal to my parents. Although they were initially surprised, they listened to me attentively. In the end, they agreed. Before moving out, I told Samuel and his wife that it would be necessary to transfer the deed for this high-rise apartment from my name to Samuel's. Samuel agreed without hesitation, and the process went smoothly. Now, all rights to this high-rise apartment belong to Samuel. Samuel and his wife left for their trip in high spirits. All right, let's get this move on. I got started on my move, just as thrilled as Samuel and his wife had been. I moved all my belongings to my new place. In the meantime, I received a call on my cell from Scarlett. "Is the move done? You're not going to change your mind, right? I'll be out by the end of the day. I'll miss having you around, as my stress reliever. Bye now." Scarlett hung up after getting her digs in. I couldn't help but look forward to seeing her go from euphoric to rock bottom when she returned. And so, the move went off without a hitch. Leaving that high-rise apartment did make me feel a bit sentimental, but it wasn't the same place where I had once lived happily with my parents. So, I decided to start afresh and began unpacking in my new home. A week later, my cell phone rang. It was Samuel calling. I didn't answer. I already knew what he'd say. He kept calling, but eventually stopped when I continued to ignore him. However, soon after, I started receiving multiple calls from Scarlett. They just kept coming, one after another. Exhausted, I finally answered the phone. "Hello?" Scarlett was almost hysterical. "Wait, what's going on? Where are Thomas and the others? And what's with the rent on this high-rise apartment? What does Arya do for a living?" "Hold on, let's take this one question at a time," I said, letting out a big sigh. Scarlett then blurted out loudly over the phone, "What do you mean? Where did Thomas and the others go?" "You mean Dad and Mom? They're here, living with me. They moved in willingly. They were fed up with you guys draining their pension." "What about the furniture and appliances? Where did they go?" "I brought them with me. Everything belongs to me. I bought them. Didn't Samuel say to take everything and leave nothing behind?" "But there's nothing left here. How are we supposed to live in this house?" "You're both grown-ups. Buy your own living essentials. You do have jobs, don't you?" "And what about this high-rise apartment? Why is there a mortgage? Didn't you buy it outright with the settlement money from your divorce?" "That's just your misunderstanding. I put down a down payment and took out a loan for this high-rise apartment. I didn't receive a single dollar in divorce settlement money. I pay $1K a month for this apartment." "What? $1K? Every month?" By the way, I have connections with the designer and the real estate agent of this high-rise, and they gave me a good deal. But now that I've transferred the property rights to Samuel, it would be rude to keep the price low. So starting next month, it's going to be a $35K monthly payment. $35K? You must be kidding! Even if I had gotten money from the divorce settlement, there's no way I could buy such a nice, spacious high-rise apartment in one go. You should be able to figure that out. Even over the phone, I could tell that Scarlett's face was turning pale. Samuel and his colleagues are well employed, so they can afford it. If they can't, they'll have to sell. But even that will probably put them in the red. What do you do exactly? You folks assumed that I was unemployed. I work as a designer in architecture, remotely. I can easily manage sudden relocations and even afford to buy a new high-rise apartment. What? Why did you keep quiet about all this? Just come back now! What are we supposed to do without your help? We'll let you live here with us! Scarlet kept yelling, still acting high and mighty. Even if you say that now, it's too late, you know. I could still hear Scarlet's loud voice, but I hung up the phone right then. Immediately after, I blocked both Samuel and Scarlet's numbers. From what I heard through the grapevine, Samuel and Scarlet were obsessed with gambling before they got married. It seemed they had sunk all their money into it. Because of that, they racked up a ton of debt and couldn't pay the rent for their fancy high-rise apartment. They were given eviction notices. They came to my high-rise apartment to beg for money from my parents. They assumed I had bought the whole place outright because it was so nice and concluded they wouldn't have to pay rent. So they moved in without asking. I had always wondered why those two show-offs never had a wedding. Turns out they wanted to, but couldn't afford it. Of course, they would spend their own salaries on gambling, leaving utility bills and other household expenses for my parents to cover, with their pension. It didn't stop there. They were even siphoning off my parents' pension money to fuel their gambling habit. Given that situation, it was a no-brainer for my parents to agree when I proposed that we distance ourselves from Samuel and his wife and move to a new high-rise apartment. We let go of the old place and purchased a new, comfortable high-rise apartment. What's more, this new high-rise was actually designed by me. Through some connections, we managed to buy it for a third of the price. We could even afford to pay it off all at once, no loan needed. Afterwards, I heard Samuel and Scarlett never paid the rent for the old high-rise and ended up selling it. But they're still stuck with the ongoing loan payments. Having lost their place to live, they've apparently moved to an old, cheap apartment. Despite their dire financial situation, they're still the type to care only about appearances. They still dress in what looks like luxury brands. So now they're living from hand to mouth, struggling with loans and debts every day. Apparently someone saw them a while back getting loads of bread crusts from a bakery. It's scary to even think about the kind of life they're living now. As for my parents and me, we're enjoying peaceful days. The new high-rise is comfortable, my job is going great, and life is smooth sailing. I've been getting calls from unknown numbers, probably Samuel or Scarlett, but I've ignored them. Just last week, I changed my mobile number. Now I doubt I'll be hearing from Samuel or Scarlett anymore. I plan to continue enjoying calm days in this new setting, together with my parents.